5 economic signs online hiring was never built to benefit its stakeholders. Markets tell you what they value, not by what they say, but by what they reward. Hi, my name is Sarah Trumbull. I'm the founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective, the first anonymous user reviews for job ads across the U.S., like Yelp in a world of professionally mandated fine dining with no health department and no FDA. This is a level of go-to-market awareness as well as public service for all the gaslighting. Um, I am making these blogs. These are already written blogs. They go out twice a week to journalists, economists, and all the other people. But I'm making it available in video and audio format just to kind of broaden the audience and broaden the scope because it's important, paradigm shifts and all. It takes time. Yeah. These information is important. I'm an independent scholar. I encourage you to use your discernment and engage with it as falsifiable data. But yeah, I'll get started. These are always an invitation to consideration, not gospel. You're always welcome to engage with it, but let's go ahead and get started. I'm pretty excited about it because I'm confident about what I'm doing. A friend tells you she hates gossip, then spends an hour dishing about everyone's drama just to keep you informed. You're not confused. You're just amused watching someone deceive, perhaps even themselves, about what they're optimizing for. The online hiring market does the same. It's a slot machine that insists it's a vending machine. It says it exists to match workers with jobs, but it profits from circulation, clicks, applications, repeats, not resolution. The longer you search, the more valuable you are. Here are 5 economic signs that prove the system is not broken. It's working exactly as designed, just not for you. Who this is for: job seekers who sense the system is rigged but are told to just keep applying. Employers frustrated with broken platforms and invisible candidates who want real efficiency through trust. Policymakers, researchers, and economists searching for measurable proof that misaligned incentives, not skills gaps, drive hiring inefficiency. If you've spent time panicked and looking for work, feeling gaslit out of your own reality, this is for you. Yeah. And I might make a follow-up to this. There were far more signs than this, but this is a place to start. 5 is a good number, and I run long anyways. I'm long-winded because I'm long-winded, This is the curse of autistic ADHD externalized processing. Yeah. Number 1, free job postings and employer-facing SaaS. That's software as a subscription service. The degraded signal and behavioral conditioning for employers. When job postings stop costing anything real, money, space, or reputation, they stop meaning anything real. In the newspaper era, every ad had weight. You paid because you meant it. Each posting carried consequence, a real role, a real need, a real chance. Then came free listings and employer-facing SaaS. Platforms began monetizing attention, not resolution. They profit from impressions, clicks, and volumes, not matches. A quality job ad stopped being the goal. Engagement became the product. Think about it. In the newspaper era, misleading the labor force cost them money. Online, it's profitable, because the longer you spend unemployed with these ghost jobs and fake jobs, the more profitable you are. And over time, employers were conditioned to see ease as progress. Bulk posts, one-click renewals, boosted visibility, the same psychology that sells king-size candy bars and meal upgrades. The system rewards convenience while quietly detaching power from consequence. Job postings became marketing assets optimized for engagement, not hiring. The signal collapsed, but the dopamine stayed. I've spoken to this before. I had a fun time. I created a assistant to the general manager, not speaking to, confused with assistant manager, job post, with skill sets in beat farming and karate. And if you've ever watched The Office, you'll recognize Dwight Schrute's, job description, which ended with ghost us before we ghost you. It was quite successful. All over the place. Got through the ad checks. It's very important. Good for me. When ease replaces effort and visibility replaces accountability, the market stops transmitting truth. It's just Craigslist. The online job market is literally a bad version of Craigslist, And that's the degraded signal and the conditioning that keeps it alive. And once the signal collapses, pollution rushes in to fill the vacuum. Number 2, no cost for market pollution. Again, I'm going to speak this, the ghost job problem. With degraded signal comes market pollution. Employers face no penalty for flooding job boards with duplicate, outdated, or fake posts. Again, the newspaper would lose money for this behavior. Online, it's profitable. Each one wastes hours of unpaid applicant labor, but boosts platform metrics. And the noise costs employers more money too. They get talent shortages or resume spam because the job seekers don't know what they're looking at because of all the information asymmetry. Boom, bing, bang, boom. Here we go. In any other market, pollution carries a cost. This was never built into the impact of online hiring. Thus, what for other markets would be a detriment in online hiring became incentivized. In reality, not knowing the job seeker user experience should be a red flag about whether job seekers are stakeholders or products. A wild red flag. They're clearly the thing the market was built to capture. The fact that you have no idea what their user experience is such an indicator of harm. The fact that economic first principles now feel threatening to discuss should alert us that something has gone very wrong. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you as a person. It means you've been trained to engage with them that way. And the fact that you've been trained to engage with them that way means the harm has been going on for a long time. And that's a problem, right? If job seekers were a product of the market, you would need to know their user experience to make it more efficient so you could get the product to the customer quickly. If job seekers were a stakeholder in the market, you would need to know their user experience so that you could meet the human needs, because what else is the market for? The fact that you're actively trying not to know. Ooh, that's the logic. Why in general? I mean, to break it down, when degradation of trust and time is free, it becomes the cheapest path to profit. After all, did Vegas build slot machines or vending machines? Get this out of here. Let me say that one more time. After all, did Vegas build slot machines or vending machines? And what would Vegas's slot machines look like without regulation? Attention becomes the currency, and time, especially unpaid time, becomes the fuel. Ghost jobs aren't glitches. They're the exhaust system built on attention, not accountability. It's just the lack of accountability. This stuff doesn't need to happen because of some great nefarious desire to cause harm. If you've never been ever required to clean up your house, you just won't clean it up. You're a landlord that doesn't have to fix the roof when it breaks. Everybody's just living in a broken house, you know? It's just time. Things break all the time. That's just the nature of things, you know? Ghost jobs are just clickbait. They're funny cat videos. Their babies laugh. And on LinkedIn, they get the employers to create the noise for free. The hiring intermediary market in general, platforms, ATS vendors, recruiters, and sub-recruiters, controls employment access for 1 to 2 billion workers while operating in a regulatory void. This is globally. Job seekers face perfect information asymmetry. They cannot see which jobs are real, how algorithms filter them, or whether recruiters are authorized. This is generating the largest ever documented acre loft market for lemons in history, global history. A software architecture where adverse selection, ghost jobs proliferating, efficiency declining, qualified candidates excluded is not system failure. It is the business model itself. The cumulative welfare loss over the last 10 to 15 years conservatively exceeds $30 trillion globally. Calculated as follows. Follow me here, and again, falsifiable. You're welcome to vet it. Global workforce turnover generates approximately 495 million hires annually. JOLTS data shows a hires opening ratio of 0.71 in the U.S. An application to hire ratio suggests job seekers submit 400 plus applications per hire, compared to perhaps 20 to 30 needed in a transparent market. To be honest, I think 400 is pretty low, but I was trying to go reasonable. This yields a roughly $100 billion excess applications annually, representing $1.5 trillion a year in wasted applicant time at blended global wage rates. Now, but application waste is the smallest component. Harvard's Hidden Workers study documents 27 million qualified U.S. workers excluded by algorithmic filtering, approximately 16% of the workforce. Globally, they suggest it was only in the U.S. that it was everywhere, too. They suggest about 528 million workers face persistent underemployment, creating a productivity loss of $2.6 trillion annually. Additionally, extended search times generate wage scarring effects well documented in labor economics. Facing delayed entry or prolonged searches, workers facing that suffer 5 to 15% wage penalties lasting 5 to 15 years. Across annual hiring cohorts, these scarring effects and algorithm-driven mismatches compound to trillions in lost productivity. These three measurable channels, application waste, 1.5 trillion a year, systemic exclusion, 2.6 trillion a year, and wage scoring mismatch, cumulative cohort effects, sum to 30 trillion over 10 to 15 years, knowing when you're your own annoying person with the phone. Over 10 to 15 years, sum up to over 30 trillion. This estimate excludes employer screening costs, mental health impacts, and macroeconomic multipliers, making it conservative easily. Just staggering lapse in judgment going on here in the labor market. Staggering. Yet the dysfunction evades regulation because it falls between labor law, which governs employment, and consumer protection, which governs products. What makes this unprecedented is not just scale, but mechanism. This is the first global market failure enforced by code rather than coercion, spreading at software speed while remaining invisible to the people it harms most. This is an illustrative model using conservative assumptions from JOLTS job openings, labor and turnover survey, hidden workers, Harvard's, and standard wage scoring estimates. You can find them from the National Bureau of Economic Research and a variety of places, Economic Policy Institute, et cetera, and so forth. Just staggering. And I come at academics for this, but let's be clear, public policy-wise, the level of you dropped the ball. Just wow. And journalists are fully capable of reading information and doing basic journalistic efforts. Considering how many millions of job seekers have been talking for decades about how miserable they are, and it was never investigated. And it was publicly available fiscal year reports that I find this information from. Everybody can see it. Every AI knows the job market is inverted. It profits the longer it can keep the unpaid laborers unemployed. How is this going to end without people doing something? This is absurd. These institutions were created to protect the labor force from the very thing that they insulted the labor force for not participating in. Just staggering lack of judgment. Number 3, this is not the only thing here. No transparency around ATS systems, choice denied. Job seekers have no way to know which applicant tracking system they're encountering. Greenhouse, Workday, Taleo, Lever, or dozens of others, each with its own invisible filters and parsing logic. Imagine buying something online, something that controlled your ability to eat and pay rent, and you didn't know which payment system the site uses and never find out if your order went through. What are we talking about? Job seekers are forced to submit blinds, never sure their data is even being read correctly, and never notified if this is the labor layer that blinded them from entry. This isn't market competition, it's lock-in by confusion. Transparency about ATS usage would create informed choice. I prefer to apply at places with Greenhouse. I've had better success at places with Workday. You don't get that choice. You don't get it. You don't get an explanation of which place you're using. You don't get a choice or training. You don't know. Its absence sustains dependence and builds accountability. I spoke to this in Behind Skills and Mismatch. The level to which job seekers are such an utterly unprotected consumer in this market. Just staggering lapse in judgment. And the fact that ATS systems exist at all in and of itself is a level of a confirmation that the market doesn't work, in my opinion. But again, it's more of a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean when we're talking about complex dynamic systems, there's not one singular answer. There's a lot of indicative points, The existence of them in the first place is indicative. Number 4, opaque market actors, trust hijack. Job seekers can't tell if they're engaging with a real employer, stakeholder, or a vendor, a staffing firm, a reseller, or a SaaS intermediary. The confusion benefits the middleman. Vendors absorb deference meant for employers. As a startup entrepreneur in the market, I encountered this people offering, I'll just use your email when I try to hire people for it. Why would you do that? How would they know that you're you instead of me? Why would we want that? That's weird, That's not smooth. That's market capture, value capture. Employers lose honest feedback because job seekers are going to talk to you. They're not going to tell you about it if they think you're the employer. And vendors know that. Job seekers misplace their trust and time. This is particularly predatory in the case of diversity and discrimination. Just staggeringly predatory in that regard. Reuters talked about this. Amazon scrapped a biased ATS system in 2018. They wrote an article, Reuters did, about it because they were talking about Amazon scrapped it. They had created an ATS system where they took away your age, your name, your gender, so that you could supposedly, it would be unbiased. They discovered, if you know linguistics, that of course it was definitely biased still because we have an androcentric language. That's what it is. So, so Amazon ended up scrapping it, which is good. But then they outsourced to Workday. And interestingly enough, did you know that hiring discrimination is one of the most difficult to prosecute discriminations? The one thing you have to prove is that you didn't know it was happening. So if you, for example, used an outsourced ATS system that you couldn't know because it was another company, it'd be a lot of shenanigans could happen, But again, it's not just about intentional harm. It's about neglect, about lack of knowing. That's the problem here. It's this kind of thing, the ATS, the staff, that when an applicant can't tell who excluded, then the ATS, the staffing firm or the employer, it creates a blanket layer of opacity that doesn't prevent discrimination so much as host it while avoiding accountability. Or consider the job seeker who applies to what appears to be a direct employer posting only to discover it's a staffing agency building a candidate pool with no actual client. They waste hours looking for materials for a job that doesn't exist and have no way to warn others or hold anyone accountable. Again, it's just mass waste of time and energy for people. A staggering lack of judgment here. Just staggering. The ATS stuff I could go into more detail about. My background is in linguistics, and that's how I came into this from. I was very interested in a case called Sandvik versus Barr that went to the Supreme Court back in 2020. Got me really interested in this, but you talk to yourself about two lexical sets. When you're talking about this ATS system, greenhouses versus Workday versus Taleo versus Unilever, whatever it is, doesn't matter the name of the thing. What are their lexical sets and how do they organize that particular company? Do they understand that education might work well in learning and development, or do you need two lexical words in order to match up? Who knows? They don't say. Does the HR know? I don't think so. They don't really choose based on that, do they? Like, this kind of information is required to know, and they don't know. And it's just, the lack of judgment here is just staggering to me. Number 5, conditioning deference. Platform control as professionalism. The final control mechanism is cultural, the digitization of submission. Every other marketplace, apartments, food, transportation, or entertainment, democratized through transparency. Yelp replaced that. IMDb replaced Siskel and Ebert. Riders rate drivers, diners rate restaurants. These platforms survive only by creating bilateral accountability. User reviews. Yeah. Hiring platforms did the opposite. They digitized deference, transforming job seekers from market participants, market stakeholders, into supplicants. One-way information flow became the business model. It's a wild lack of judgment. This was not inevitable. It was a choice that employers ratified. By directing businesses to platforms that eliminated worker feedback mechanisms, U.S. employers, and all global employers went this way, authorized the very first labor market system in the entire, in the U.S. that was not required to meet the needs of stakeholders in order to exist. Half their stakeholders and 95% of their users. Just, what? What's wrong with you? In every other market, vendors who ignore user signals fail. Job seekers, newspapers would have lost money. In hiring, platforms that silence job seeker feedback thrive. They silence it by ignoring their feedback. The result, ghost jobs proliferate because there's no reputational cost. Algorithms exclude qualified candidates because there's no appeals process. Employers can withdraw offers without consequence because there's no review system. Hierarchy is not strength. It's so not strength. It's obviously not. It's lack of adaptability in an authority costume. It's brittleness in an authority costume. Performance in an authority costume. When one side cannot signal quality, preferences, or problems, you don't have a market, you have extraction. Hierarchy is just lack of adaptability. It's obviously not resilient. The advice, don't badmouth employers, used to be a career strategy. Now it's structural coercion that prevents market correction. When supply cannot communicate with demand, you do not get equilibrium. You get supply and more supply. And why aren't you already here? Supply and work for free for supply. Deference is not professionalism here. It is market capture disguised as etiquette, and it is enforced through code, no rating systems, no appeal mechanism, no transparency requirement. The platforms that built this architecture choices don't just create tools, they create a power structure that makes dysfunctional matching economically rational for everyone, but the unpaid labor force that drives all of its profits. What did you think was going to happen? There's only one rational outcome to this behavior. It's global economic collapse. That's all this is, just in slow motion speeding up. Nash, in game theory, describes as the Nash non-converging. Nash equilibrium describes it coming together. Non-converging equilibrium describes how it will collapse faster and faster, which I think demonstrably it is. How many democracies do we want to destabilize before we decide to do something here? That's the question. Together, these 5 forces form the architecture of extraction. Whether emergent or intentional, the impact is the same. Again, it doesn't need to be intentional. Grammar. No, there's no grammar police for real. Grammar exists because it emerges from a complex dynamic series of interactions. Patriarch is kind of saying there's nobody taught it. They get taught eventually, but they emerge from the interactions. Yeah. I list some of my own research here. I had the architecture with investment that I would build. Again, I make this sort of stuff to drive market awareness, to throw pebbles and ponds to see if any impact investors are out there, to get more people on my site. And so if they want to see how I would use the investment, I have a design for my market design for my trust infrastructure, 3 interlocking layers on my SSRN. Here, also beyond skills mismatch, incentive-driven market dysfunction, online hiring, where I take several famous academic studies and demonstrate how they failed to look at them from the other aspects of what online job seekers are. Also, there's just general economic research in this kind of thing. Check out Rocher and Tourelle, I'm French guys. They wrote Platform Competition in Two-Sided Markets, Journal of European Economics Association. Evans and Schmalnis, I apologize if I'm butchering the names here. Matchmakers, the New Economics of Multi-Sided Platforms. Akerlof wrote his Market for Lemons back in the 70s. These works show when one side of a market is silenced, transparency becomes a threat, not a feature, and the market itself becomes its own bottleneck. Yeah. So this is my solution here, is the job applicant perspective through building the market architecture from the ground up, introducing a 2-sided trust layer where job seekers can review hiring experiences, employers can build verified reputations, and platforms can finally be accountable to the people that they affect most. Yeah, it's just Uber with no driver reviews. We need driver reviews. Airbnb with no host reviews. We need host reviews. It's not actually overly complicated. It's Econ 101. When the market serves employer needs to, it delivers engagement. But look at this. When the market serves job seeker needs, it delivers resolution for everyone. The solution here is you have to serve job seekers and also have employers there too. That's what delivers efficiency and resolution. The fascinating thing here is by being more humane to job seekers, you get a more efficient market. It's wild to me. But if you really think about it, 2-sided markets, Disney World serves children so it can serve parents. Flower markets serve girlfriends so they can serve boyfriends. The fact that the job market only serves the one end, the customer end, is why it doesn't work. You have to serve the user end in order to serve the customer end. That's it. That's the way. You lose that when you lose what a 2-sided market is, which is what has happened here. A market with crowdsourced reviews creates a fair platform for small businesses like Yelp for fine dining. It did not kill small local restaurants. It made them be able to stand out. It creates radical efficiency for all, informed choices based on experience, reclaim power, dignity, and agency. Who better, genuinely, to regulate the labor market than the users whose survival depends on it functioning? The unpaid users who drive all of its profits, whose survival depends on its functioning. I feel like this is gangbusters. I really would be fascinated to hear the economic argument against economic logic. Just fascinated. In reality, the stories we do not tell are the people we don't protect and the stakeholders a market does not profit. It just is. It's just like, as much as people try to use fancy shenanigans here, 1 and 1 is 2. No matter how much people say a lot of words around it, 1 and 1 is still 2. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Economics is still economics. A market is a market is a market is a market. You're just not correct. I'm sorry. You just aren't. The pattern. Every one of these signals points to the same truth. The online labor market is not a malfunctioning meritocracy. It's an attention refinery where unpaid human efforts, the raw material, desperation human efforts, by the way, people losing their homes and families. This. At a level to which I do not respect this behavior is astronomical. Hierarchy performs strength in functions like a lack of adaptability in an authority costume. It's brittleness in authority costume. When performance theater meets structural rigidity, you get exponential data drift. Exponential. The difference between what economists think is happening in the market and what's actually happening in the market is wild to me. They're so disconnected from reality. So disconnected from reality because they're not listening. That's that trained lack of empathy creates this barrier where they're in an information silo because they've trained themselves to be disconnected from actual information. It's a psychological thing that we need to engage with because it could happen to any of us. It's not like people at Harvard or MIT are somehow less connected to reality. If it can happen to them, it can happen to all of us. Systemic thinking requires us to engage with this in reality, not demonize any of the actors to understand what's happening here so we can do so. But let's be real clear. There's a reason that Pfizer doesn't create medicine and then desperately not try to hear from the people that they deliver their medicine to. There's a reason that Ford doesn't create cars and desperately not try to hear back from the drivers. So the reason that the labor market creates labor market equipment that the labor force needs to drive to get to employers, and the labor market absolutely desperately tries not to know what that equipment functions like, is, 1 and 1 is still 2 here. This is not evolution. This is economic market devolution in a fancy suit. A market that wasn't built to solve your problems, but to have a plausible explanation for not solving them. The solution, though, is not to burn something down. It solves nothing. The solution is to build accountability into the existing architecture. It's the same as you don't demonize things and you don't burn somebody down. You try to understand that. You understand what's going on here. You try to wake people up. You try to understand what's happening here so you can fix it. Because we still have to eat. We don't want society to collapse. That's the bad idea. That's the wrong side of things. We want it to work. So how do we make it work, That's why we built the job applicant perspective, not as another job board, but as a trust layer that makes opacity unprofitable and transparency inevitable. We see ourselves as the eventual Google Maps of the online market. We see Better Business Bureau. We will help talent companies earn job seeker star ratings so they can earn employer subscriptions. Markets self-correct when users can signal. Right now, half of the stakeholders and over 95% of the users are muted in the labor market. TJAP unmutes them. Job seeker feedback isn't something to be silenced. It's a gold mine to correct the market. How would Uber work without feedback? It wouldn't. It's the same thing. So that's me. This is the job applicant perspective. I hope you'll stop by. I hope you like, follow, and share. Comment below. All of the things because we think we're important. We're going to change the world. Paradigm shifts, It's not like 2025 has been boring, right? Let's go ahead and do something fun. Make good trouble and all that. Stay sane out there and be kind to each other on the road. We don't got to be rich, but we don't got to be cruel to each other, You don't need money to be kind, to be considerate. It's not required. So stay sane, be safe, and have a good one.